So for this panel, we have four people joining, four ecosystem developers joining us. So if you have any questions from the audience, feel free to chat, put it on the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll be glad to answer it during the discussion. Awesome. While I'm promoting everyone as a panelist, maybe we can go around and introduce ourselves. So Dominique, why don't you start?
Hello, I'm Dominique Piotet. I'm French and American, and I live in Kyiv, in Ukraine. I'm the CEO of Unit City.
Nice to have you here, Dominique. Next, Milton.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, everyone. I'm Milton Cabral from Cabo Verde, a small country in West Africa. I'm the project manager for the Cabo Verde Digital Initiatives. That is the initiatives to boost the local innovation ecosystem for startups.
Next, Solomon, good morning.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from me here from Washington, D.C. I'm Ethiopian American based in D.C. and also Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the capital city of Ethiopia. I'm a TV personality, a producer and host of a weekly tech and science show, and also a tech consultant and a strategist, and recently just launched a startup studio called 1888 EC based in Addis Ababa and also in Washington, D.C., but mainly to serve Ethiopian domain. Thanks.
Thank you, Solomon. And hi, Isabela. Good morning. Introduce yourself as well. We can't hear you, I think. We don't hear you. Hello? Hi, Isabela. No, we can't hear you. Okay, so yes.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Isabela. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Cali Chamber of Commerce in Colombia. We've been running development programming for about 50 years or so. However, this unit, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Unit, was just launched about 6 years ago. We were launched in order to start the startup ecosystem here, to ignite it, launch mentor networks, accelerator programs, scale-up programming, as well as investor networks. So we've been running this for about 6 years. We have become quite successful nationally, to the point that the national agency Impulsa is already looking to do transfer programs and having us do transfer methodologies with them. So this is quite exciting. So happy to be here. Thank you, Eli, for inviting us, and thank you, StartupBlink.
Welcome, everyone. So we can move on to our first question. So first question is for everyone. What challenges do developing ecosystems and small ecosystems face when building a startup ecosystem? So maybe we can start with Solomon for this.
Sure. That is a great question too. A good starter. I think, in my opinion, there are so many layers of issues when it comes to developing country, where digital transformation, is not realized in good level capacity, from support organizations and from corporate kind of venture culture, because big companies are not existing, especially for my country of origin, Ethiopia. So that lack of presence of corporate, collaboration is a huge issue. And some of it is like the feed between institutions and the startup or the entrepreneurship world. So maybe a lack of like R&D or kind of a relationship between like Silicon Valley and Stanford kind of environment is lacking. Other huge issue is funding, of course. and service providers, and talent is also an issue. When I say talent is an issue, I'm not saying that there is not enough talent, but a tailored and a custom tailored talent that can understand a startup world and entrepreneurship, that fast kind of pace environment. The talent is not geared towards that, so that is another issue that I see. And then lack of mentorship as well, to cultivate this kind of culture. So because if you think of developing world today, you can think of it like where the developed world started about 40-50 years ago, like the Silicon Valley is 50 years ago. Just think of it that way, but with added layers of issues. So we just starting. So that means to reach to where we need to go, there are a lot of layers that need to be in place. Some of the other things that I didn't mention is regulatory environment is another issue. I'm sure we're going to talk about it later on a kind of subsequent conversations, and the culture also, the collaborative culture, embracing new changes. When we talk about startups, in this 21st century, we're mainly talking about tech-based startups and knowledge-based ecosystem, digital economy. So that culture is not really in traction in developing countries, because the way of doing things, the norm is different. That very traditional, manual, doing the same things, the status quo is heavy. So when you are coming up with new ideas, the challenge is always there. Of course, depending on the demographics. For example, in Ethiopia, it's one of the most youth nation in Africa, in the world. Maybe average age in Ethiopia is 19, so that might not be an issue as much, but you see it from the policymakers, from businesses, and from financial institutions, and many others. And the other big element is risk tolerance for startups, because there's a culture that quick return is really much needed. You build a hotel, or you build a factory, or you build a moms and pops shop in brick and mortar, you realize the return on investment, or you fail immediately. It's either or. But with startup ecosystem building, it takes time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So that mindset is not there yet. So tolerance for risk and giving it space and time to grow is not there. And then something that is elusive, they can't touch it, they can't feel it. When you say, I have an idea in my mind and I'm developing an app, or whatever the case might be, people have a hard time understanding, because the culture was that you would show a land or a blueprint for a building, or a business plan for a grocery shop. It's kind of more tangible, versus this one is very intangible. So I think that culture is not there yet. So all this, a culmination of things making it hard for developing countries to embrace this startup ecosystem in a much needed speed. So that's what I would say, and I'll pause here.
Thank you for that, Solomon. And Milton, maybe you can add something coming from a similar culture and ecosystem as well.
Sorry, Catherine, I lost the initial question. Please.
Yeah, so the first question was, what challenges do developing or small ecosystem face when building startups and startups?
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, for having me here. Actually, I can share some experience about the implementation of the Cabo Verde digital initiatives. There is a very early initiatives. We launched it past year during the Web Summit. That basically is the translation of a very big willing of the government to promote the digital and the local tech startups as an engine for the country development. And our experience during these last 2 years, it's very positive, but very challenging, because it's a kind of creating a critical mass first, and then putting this critical mass producing results. And this action to creating critical mass in our reality, we are implementing it through some key program. We call it a flagship program. One, it's a kind of early stage startups pre-incubation program that basically we aim to put the young girls and boys in the level of readiness that we want, much in the mindset, in the thinking matrix than in the technological aspects, because we do believe that the innovation and technology is a social process and not a end by itself. So this program, Bolsa Cabo Verde Digital, that's the brand that we use for this program. Basically, we pre-incubate 15 young boys and girls with financial support and capacity building program to put them to focus in what's really matter, that is the development of their projects. And we have 2 more programs also in the field of conversion, normal people's, let me say in these words, to coders, in order to respond to the demand that we have here in Cape Verde, as a very small country, where the state or the public machine is the main buyer, let me say in this word, and also to respond to the global demand of high-tech skilled persons. Another program that we have, that we also run, we call it Reinventa. That's a program that raised up during the pandemic, the start of the pandemic situation in Cape Verde. That basically it's a kind of open innovation program that we, by the first moment, we map the gaps in the vertical. We started with the tourism vertical, and then we launch a call for solution, and then we make a hackathon. And all these 3 flagship program, I mentioned it to say that we felt that the big challenge is in the mindset. It's to put the decision makers and also the development community in the same mindset and with the same awareness of the potential that technology can represent to the country and to the development. And all these supported, of course, by a big willing of the government. I do believe that's a key aspect. We have to have the proper support of the local government in order to put in place key assets to support these community, these entrepreneurs in developing their projects. So thank you.
Dominique, how about in Ukraine, like being in Europe and surrounded by all these more established ecosystems? What are the main challenges that Ukraine is facing as a growing ecosystem?
Well, thank you. That's a very interesting and deep questions. I think we all face a lot of challenges. One of the few things I would like to mention first. I come from Silicon Valley. I mean, I've been living in Silicon Valley in San Francisco for 17 years. It's an ecosystem I know very well. And arriving in Ukraine, I quickly understood that copying is not an option. I think we have to be really clear on that. We are all, of course, very attracted by Silicon Valley. We see something that we think is a model. And in fact, it's not a model. It doesn't make any sense to try or to want to duplicate Silicon Valley. It's a very unique place. It should stay very unique. I actually think that if a government of a country or a place wants to duplicate Silicon Valley, that would be a huge failure. That might even be dangerous. So my recommendation is, let's be inspired by Silicon Valley. Let's learn from Silicon Valley, and let's try to figure out what works for us. I like to refer at Silicon Valley as a mindset more than a model. And I think the mindset of Silicon Valley is what is interesting. Now, if I look at the bigger picture, that will apply pretty well to Ukraine, actually. What you need to develop a good tech ecosystem is basically three things. You need talent, you need the people. Without the people, there's nothing you can do. You cannot imagine them, you cannot invent them, you can attract them, which is, by the way, what Silicon Valley has been doing for years and years and years and years. 50% of the entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley are non-American. And we always forget that, but if you're not able to attract talent, then you have an issue. But once again, in Ukraine, for example, we are lucky because we have extremely good, strong tech talent. And it's not new, it's historical, and actually takes a lot of time to build those technical talents. But not many people know, but the helicopter has been invented in Ukraine. And we have tons of those inventions, and we have really good university, really good, strong tech talent. The second thing is something that most of us are lacking is money. If you don't have funding, if you don't have money, then you're not going to create an ecosystem. And actually, when you look at all the money there is in Silicon Valley, you understand that that's one of the key elements. And not only you need money, but you need to have a specific type of money, that is money that you're ready to lose, which is a huge luxury in most of our countries. We don't have the luxury to have money that we're ready to lose. We need the small amount of money we have to bring us return or to be efficient, to help us bring schools, roads. So investing in startup, which is a very risky business, is something difficult, but we need that money. So we need that funding, and sometimes that funding can come from government, which is always very useful. We have that in Ukraine. We have the Ukrainian Startup Fund, but it's not enough. So we need to attract investors. We need to attract funds. We need to develop a culture of venture investing. We are at the beginning of that in Ukraine. I think like most of all of us, this is something we're looking for, that specific type of money that investors are ready to lose. And then we need a third thing, and that is probably the most difficult, and we already mentioned this, is a mindset, a culture of innovation. That's one of the most difficult things, because you don't invent that mindset. You don't say, oh, we are all going to be cool, wear hoodies, have flip-flops and shorts, and then we're going to be Silicon Valley. Well, guess what? With the weather we have in Ukraine, it doesn't work. So, and if I'm saying this, I'm not just saying this as a joke, because I think for me, coming from Silicon Valley, was the most interesting and challenging thing is, how do we create a mindset of, as Milton mentioned, of collaboration, of making people work together, of failure is acceptable, for example, because that's what you do in innovation. You have to fail to sometimes succeed. And that is the most difficult part. So what we do at Unicity, for example, we have a lot of events. We bring people together, we share. We have schools. We help people not only code, but we also have a business school to help people with their soft skills. We create clubs of people working together. So I think this third challenge to me is the most difficult one, because talent you can get, money you can find, it's hard, but you can. But mindset is something you have to create. One of the things we have in Ukraine that is actually, I think, extremely interesting is we're used to crisis. Every 5 years, we have a crisis. Every 5 year, we have a revolution or a change of government that is a little bit complicated, or we become independent, or we have the coronavirus. So we are resilient. And this is one of the key elements you need when you want to create an ecosystem of innovation, is you have to be resilient, because failure is what's is probably one of the things that will happen. And I think this is one of the beauty of this country is we have developed a very strong, resilient mindset. And I think to me, that's my key takeaway is we have to build on that. And one of the challenge too is you have to build on what you have. You have to build on who you are as a country, as a community, to be innovative. So that would be my take on your question.
Thank you, Dominique. Isabela, it's very unique because the rest of the panel is actually representing a country, and you're the only one that's representing a city. So maybe you can give us challenges that non-capital cities face when building an ecosystem and a hub for themselves.
Great, Katrin. Actually, I would say that I pretty much agree with much of what Solomon, Milton, and Dominique have said, but maybe I can give you a more specific example. In terms of developing ecosystems, our greatest problem has to do with, mindset development when you actually don't have enough talent to retain and to do that, because mindset development actually takes a long time. Creating a culture of innovation, creating a culture of entrepreneurship, it could take 10 years, 15 years, a decade too. So one of our biggest challenges, and I was thinking, and actually all of you guys touched upon it, has to do with brain drain. So, and Dominic said it, Silicon Valley is a brain attractor. So they actually position their ecosystem so that everybody goes and builds their startup there. One of our greatest challenges in Cali, we're the third largest city in the country, has to do not even with brain drain outside of the country. It's brain drain within the country. So what has happened to us in the last 6 years is that one of the things that we decided when we started building this ecosystem was that we were actually going to become a little seedbed for new ecosystem developers. So we started, recruiting university graduates and students since they come out of their, when they do their internship, they usually start through the chamber, so that they actually start diving into what it means to work in the startup ecosystem, what it means to be an entrepreneur, even though we're, ecosystem developers. The fact that young people had the opportunity to work in accelerator programs or in scale-up programs with entrepreneurs made a whole difference. So I was talking to my boss the other day, the president here at the chamber, and I was telling him, the first time I went to recruit an intern for, one of my programs here, I had to beg them because Cali had no credibility in terms of having startups here, having scale-ups, about having investor networks, etc. I had to beg people to come do their internship here. Today, we actually have over 200 applicants every semester who want one of the 4 spots that we have for this internship. So it's changed a bit, but the biggest issue that we have is that retention. So, we help, we select them, we identify them, they work with us, and what we want is for them to go into other ventures, either to companies, to help startups, to help scale-ups. But my biggest issue right now is the brain drain. That's, they're jumping internationally, they're jumping to Bogota, they're getting pulled out of the city. So what I eventually expect and what we would want in terms of mindset development is that, sure, they can go, they should go get experience elsewhere and then bring it back. So having not only the brain drain, but also attracting and repatriating people. So one of the biggest issues a third city like Cali has, is repatriating talent. Today we have amazing entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, in New York, in Madrid, elsewhere in the country, but one of the biggest challenges is having them come back. And the way that we have actually had them come back, in a sense, is that we help them reconnect with their local ecosystem through the diaspora networks that we have. So we have mentor networks, we have the investor networks. So they will not be present, often. However, we will create the opportunities for them to come and inspire and connect and start building those relationships abroad, which is particularly important in an ecosystem like this. So, brain drain is the biggest thing, and mindset development. So, however, what we think we've done is taking people from a very young age inspire them, create them, mobilize them so that they fall in love with their local ecosystem, they can go abroad, and then eventually 10 years from now, whatever, after they gain a lot of experience, make a lot of money, bring it back. And then I finally would add what Dominique was saying was money. However, one of the biggest sure, we don't have the sort of money that the Silicon Valley has. However, these local ecosystems have money. We have rich families, bigger companies, corporations who are now starting to understand the opportunity that they have in terms when they invest in entrepreneurship. So one of the things we've been focusing on lately is have those groups of corporates, general managers understand the opportunity that they will have when they start doing corporate entrepreneurship. So we've moved quite a bit not just from working with angel investor networks, but also with corporations here. So that's a big opportunity. However, training people into understand that there is an opportunity in terms of investing in startups, in scale-ups, doing ventures with them. It takes a while in terms of changing that culture, but we're working towards that. But there's local money, not as much as there might be in other countries, but the things that we have to do is work on having people identify the opportunity. So that would be my answer, just complementing what Dominique, Solomon, and Milton have said.
Yeah, just to a follow-up question on that, Isabel, now that you're slowly, hopefully closing the gaps with Bogota and the other ecosystems in Colombia, what do you think are the specific programs that you did to maybe change the image? Like you mentioned before, you had to beg people to be an intern. Now there's so many applications. What are the specific programs maybe that you did to attract more people and to change the image of Cali in general?
Yeah. So I would say that we have tons of programming. So just in terms of how we're built, I work with startups, 3 months, 6 months, maybe $50,000 in sales. And I also work with corporations. So maybe $500 million in sales a year. I work with the corporations in terms of innovation. So there's programming throughout all the different stages of that growth. However, I would say that what actually worked for us was focusing on building the pipeline. So when we started working in Cali, we didn't have, a high impact or high growth accelerator program. So there were a couple prizes, but I'm like an anti-prize person. I don't like, contests to give out money for free. So what we started saying with telling entrepreneurs was that the best prize that they could get from the market was a client selling, a client purchase actually. So we had Valle, we launched that. The program is in its 8th, 9th version already. And we launched also a scale-up program called Valle Impacta. Both programs have had interns help them. We actually have interns going, be part of the support and the assistance of the group. Yes. However, both programs are very much into identifying the best entrepreneurs to accelerate so that they can become the future big companies of the region. Valle as an accelerator, and both programs actually have impact evaluations. We've been measuring impact since day one. Since 2015, we've had about 80 impact evaluations for Valle and for Valle Impacta. We know exactly how to select entrepreneurs, what sort of programming we should give them, and how that programming will have an impact against a control group. So those two programs have become absolutely important, not only regionally, but nationally, especially because of the impact evaluation. So because they are cost efficient. One of the biggest challenges for a startup ecosystem like in a third city like Cali is having funding to run accelerator programs. Like Solomon and Milton and Dominique will have that problem as well. So what we started doing was identifying the best way of running a program, a high impact, low cost program. So literally Valle cost us about $1,500 per entrepreneur, $1,500, very low. Valle Impacta, the scale-up program, runs about maybe $8,000 today. One of the things what we did with the scale-up program is we actually started asking entrepreneurs to pay, you know, because it's a program, it's not full acceleration. We actually don't invest in them. We help them, we run the program with them. And what ended up happening is that Impulsa, the national agency, through the impact evaluations, identified that these low-cost programs had a lot of impact, because for each of them, you know, for every dollar we invested in Valle entrepreneurs, in Valle startups, they would grow 11x. You know, that's what we want against control group. For every dollar we spent in Valle Impacta for the scale-up program, they would grow 22x against the control group. So once you start having that, what we wanted, and literally one of the things that maybe I didn't mention before, we sort of divorced ourselves from the idea of having tons of unicorns. Like everybody's looking for the super famous and, you know, mythical startup unicorn. You know, that will happen. Colombia has Rappi. Colombia has Life Miles, which is a spin-off from Avianca, which doesn't really count. So what we decided is that maybe we don't want unicorns. Maybe we want, how do you call the big horses? Percherones, the big pool horses from, like, you know, Finland and big, you know, the bigger horses. We wanted this like a long time, like horses and companies that could take the economy for a while. So that's what we've been building. We're not looking for unicorns. We're looking for companies that will keep stable for 15, 20, 30 years. And maybe there might be spin-offs that will come. One of them might become a unicorn, right? So those two programs are quite interesting. And I'm actually happy and pleased to say that last week, we started seeing that Crunchbase has Valle Impacta as the number 2 startup accelerator program in Latin America. And Valle, which today is called Acelera Región, because the national agency started to fund it and they're taking it to other cities in the country, is the number 5 startup program in Latin America. So, and this is all done through impact evaluation. So that would be like the 2 things we've invested in, not looking for unicorns, rather, you know, long draw pool entrepreneurs and startups, knowing that if we build everything else, we recruit the talent, if we train it, if we create the connections with capital, if we make all the ecosystem components become, you know, stronger, then we might find a unicorn, you know, but understanding that we're not just spending all our resources just on finding unicorns, because we want more, like a bigger mass of startups growing in time.
Thank you, Isabella. Next question is for Solomon, like just following up on the question on reforms and policies, like now that Ethiopia is really changing its vision and its look at startups and startup ecosystem, how do you think this will affect Ethiopia as a growing hub, growing ecosystem hub in the future? I think you're on mute, Solomon.
Unmuting might help. Thanks, Isabel, and everyone for insightful comments and insights. For Ethiopia, it's a little bit unique. I've been in the space for the past 9 years, as I said, as a TV host, as an influencer. You know, even though I'm based here in the States, I frequent to my country of origin to grassroots movement for tech and digital and everything. But my position was unique in such a way that I was able to achieve what I call bottom up and top down approach, because of my influence, I had access to, you know, policymakers and decision makers, and influencing that through my, you know, speaking engagement, my show, and I have a book, and I do panel keynote speaking and all of that. But also the TV show is helping me to, you know, engage 32 million viewers, mostly youth and college students, early careers, and you know, entrepreneurs. So I'm trying to attack it from both, so that the culture can be there. Because for us, it's a magical leapfrogging is needed, because, you know, maybe many other countries, you know, little things were happening here and there. Or for Ethiopia, this especially tech-based, knowledge-based, digital kind of ecosystem building is in a nascent stage. You know, it's not that of a long age, very, very young. I have a proposition for Ethiopia why it's going to change very soon. But at this point, we are in talent development and business mentoring, and at that early stage, and in even the ICT firms that are existing in Ethiopia, most of them are in computer importing, networking, and gadget related stuff, and not really what we call this tech-based kind of entrepreneurship. So for that purpose, I think it needs to do a policy push and also the culture change together. That's why I call top down and bottom up. But Ethiopia is in such a great position to be the next digital hub, arguably maybe sub-Saharan Africa or at least in East Africa, because as you guys know, it's the second most populous nation in Africa. And as I said, median age in Ethiopia is 19.8. And mobile penetration is really encouraging. For the past 8 years, if I tell you that's the 8-year story, it's very inspiring. It was monopoly. It's one telecom operator right now. 2012, we had 0.2 million internet users. Today, we're talking about 24 million people using internet, good speed, good bandwidth, and a cheaper price. That's why penetration is increasing. But that's about to change in the next 5-6 months. 2 more operators are allowed in Ethiopia, which is there is an active bid going on in Ethiopia to have international telecom operator to come with 2 more license, so that there's going to be 3 operators in Ethiopia. I mean, you can imagine how that connection and infrastructure piece is going to change tremendously, which has been one of the bottleneck in Ethiopia. So that's going to change. The third one is the biggest element of all, in my opinion. The sleeping giant is waking up, that as I would say, because the policymakers now, including the prime minister, is keen to digital transformation, tech and science-based economy. He himself was a science and technology minister a few years ago, so he understands it. He's subject matter expert in that regard. And many other ministers and sectoral kind of institutions are now jump-starting this digital transformation. We recently actually launched a 10-year digital transformation strategy that is law of kind of the land. And the next one is coming up to be a Startup Proclamation Act. And then I'm pushing more for a directive to be followed, so that all those three combinations, the population, the demographics, the infrastructure, developing, and the government is now championing this digital transformation, combined is going to make a huge difference. So I'm very hopeful for Ethiopia. As to me, what I'm doing with my 1888 EC, I wanted to approach, a kind of uniquely, I would call big bang, but it's not quite big bang, but something with a wider spectrum, right? That's why I chose studio. As you guys know, there is incubation, there's acceleration, there's angel, and many other, and VC and micro VC. VC culture is not existing in Ethiopia. Incubators, there are a few in Ethiopia, but that doesn't scale well. There are very, very critical elements for ecosystem building, but something that also takes to scale. If there's accelerator, that would complement. But in Ethiopia, these kind of ecosystems are not existing. So that's why I picked the studio model for me, so that with shared infrastructure, shared resource, shared pool of money, from ideation all the way to scale and exit, a studio model can support. We need many of that in Ethiopia. So with that, with top down, bottom up, the studio model, which have a wider spectrum, and now the government is now really championing for digital transformation, infrastructure, getting better, and the youthful population hungry for digital transformation and digitization of the way you're doing things. I think with these 3 or 4 elements, I think that's how I see startup ecosystem is promising in Ethiopia in the next few years. Of course, it needs time, patience, and a lot of fuel burning, as Dominique said. There's going to be a lot of money that needs to be burned, and we just need to bring that understanding to the stakeholders. And one thing that I just came back from Ethiopia, just my experience here, that one thing I challenged the local institutions is that, yes, I can go for global partners and get some funding and then bring in grants, and I can do that. That's how I'm starting right now. But I was challenging them. There's enough resource within the country, so that it's just a little bit of a mindset shift, saying that, okay, let's support, you can call it social responsibility, you can call it corporate responsibility, whatever you want to call it, but support this kind of initiative so that, the telecoms and the banks and, even private sector now, the public sector is also, becoming on board. I challenge them saying that let's, manage a tech fund together, public-private partnership. You give something X amount of money, I will match it. I will beg people, I will do whatever I can do, I will match that. So that kind of collaboration, public-private inland resource is something that can push the agenda further, while the global partnership is also extremely, extremely important. Yeah.
Thank you, Solomon. The next question is for Dominique. So Dominique, it seems that Ukraine really has two economies. Like they have a growing regular economy, like traditional one, and they also have a growing startup ecosystem that's also transforming itself into a hub. So how did it happen, and what do you think will be the effect of this phenomenon?
Well, I mean, I think it happened because we have that pool of extremely talented tech talent. It also happened, and it's interesting. We mentioned Isabela mentioned that before, because of our diaspora. Very talented Ukrainian decided to move to Silicon Valley and decided to create companies. Some of them are very well known. Grammarly, WhatsApp has been the co-founder of WhatsApp is Ukrainian. And so we started to have those role model being successful in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, and that kind of sparkles down. That brings the dream back home. Of course, the brain drain is a huge issue. Actually, that is something that Unit City is trying to solve to create the platform so talented people can say, well, I can stay home instead of moving abroad. However, this diaspora of people who left Ukraine, some of them coming back. We have a very successful company, PetCube. All the founders decided to come back from San Francisco here in Ukraine, where they have their R&D. And so I think that's. I mean, that's always something I say about innovation ecosystem. Every innovation ecosystem, when you think about it, is extremely small. Think about Silicon Valley. It's a very small space. San Francisco is 800,000 people. Silicon Valley is about 4 million people. It's very small. Think about Israel. Think about Tel Aviv. It's fairly small. And so, in fact, effective innovation ecosystems are a pretty small network of people. Those network of people need to be connected. And they need to be connected to other tech ecosystem because of the lack of talent, because of the funding, because of the R&D, because of the ideation. And I think when you have those connections, then things happen. And I think that's what we see in Ukraine. We have really good connection with Silicon Valley. We have really good connection with the diaspora. And this diaspora is starting to be willing to give back. And I think that idea of we need to give back, whether it's because I'm investing money, time, mentorship, whether it's because I'm coming back, whether it's because I'm supporting, is a very important thing. So once you start to have those success stories, and when you start to be able to build around them, then you start to have something very interesting. To me, a very interesting model is Estonia, which is almost one of our neighbor in Ukraine. Estonia started because of Skype. Nobody knows really that Skype is an Estonian company. Actually, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. But what matters is the founder of Skype remember that they are Estonian, that they are from Estonia, and they gave back to Estonia, and they started creating that amazing ecosystem that make Estonia what it is today, an extremely powerful digital country, even though it's very small. So I think that's what we start to see in Ukraine. I mean, there's a long way. We're definitely not there, but this is what we want to build. We want to build those connections, those links. I always tell people, when we talk about Unit City, which is the ecosystem we're building here, which is going to be one of the largest innovation park in Europe, more than 20,000 people. It's really a city. I always tell them, I don't want anybody to move to Unit City because they're looking for an office space. As well as you don't move to Silicon Valley because you're looking for an office space. It doesn't make sense. You're moving to Silicon Valley because you want the connection, because you want the ecosystem, because you want access. Well, I want to give that to people. So when they decide to move to Unit City or to Addis Ababa or to Cape Verde or to Cali, they do it because they have access to talent, to funding, to resources, to ideas, to a community. And I think it's extremely important. And I think this is what we're really trying to build.
Thank you, Dominique. And Milton, you mentioned a while ago that your politicians in Cape Verde are very involved in the startup ecosystem, and it's not really usual for small ecosystems for politicians to be involved. Most of them really rely on traditional economy, like the rest of the panel mentioned. So why do you think they're so involved, and how do you think you were able to really show them the benefits of having an ecosystem in Cape Verde?
Yeah, definitely. I do believe we have lucky to have Secretary of States for Innovation and Digital Economy. That is the young person with a very fresh mindset, and have the power to persuade and to influence the structure, the governmental structure for this journey. I'm talking about Pedro Lopes. Pedro Lopes, it is the Secretary of State for Innovation and Digital Economy of Cape Verde, and he are making amazing job pushing this digital journey forward, both to the community, but also to the government side, he actually have a very close relationship with the community, a kind of very accessible person, and easily to talk. So I do believe having a very young person in this scenario are contributing to us to get this initiative moving forward, get all this structure, governmental structure involved, and it is actually my belief that is the key point. But Cape Verde also is a very young country, and I do believe by this reason it's relatively easy to connect to the ecosystem, to connect people, to connect to the policymakers, and to deliver proposals and solutions. And we are actually making this journey by this very short time. As I told, Cabo Verde Digital have only 2 years of life, and our first mission, it is creating this critical mass, putting everyone in a community, connecting everyone through different initiatives that can easily put people to share initiatives, both in terms of technical skills, but also in terms of business skills. So my conviction, it's having a person with this profile, young and with a very passion to move forward the digital economy in Cape Verde, with a very strong belief in the young generation. It is critical to also involve all the government structure to move forward with this agenda.
Thank you, Milton. I think the final question for everyone. We talked about the challenges and the disadvantages of being a small and of developing economy ecosystem. But what do you think are the advantages, and how can politicians, public sector, and ecosystem developers leverage on this advantage to make the ecosystem grow? So maybe we can start with Solomon.
Yeah, I think it's no-brainer. The first thing we can say is, it's an emerging market, right? So it's a huge untapped potential, high risk. but high return. So there's a lot to be done, as I said, given the demographics and the kind of population we can serve, for example, in Ethiopia, and knowing that how many of the things are already kind of digitized and that kind of solution is provided for the population, be it the government sector, be it the private, be it in ecosystem, be it in fintech and in many other fronts. And the agricultural sector is heavy in Ethiopia, as you guys know, and then there is a lot to be modernized, and there's an untapped potential and opportunity for that to happen, be it precision farming and drone related, or AI, for data crunching and many other stuff. Really, I can just go on and on and on and on. From entertainment perspective, the streaming sector is totally untouched yet. So the advantage really for this kind of market, like Ethiopia and others, small like developing economies, is that there's a lot to be done. It's just that penetration point. Once we get through that tiny hole, then the opportunity is huge, and then ultimately the goal is to reach to that critical mass. But we need those visionaries, in a highly entrepreneurial culture. The risk takers need to, as Dominique said, those are the small population that are leading the way, so that we can collectively achieve that critical mass. The prerequisite is that those people who are taking that risk and leading by example, hustling and all that. So it takes time. As I said earlier, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not something that we will achieve tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of failures, so a lot of trials. That's why we need to be very, very agile, nimble, and MVP approach. That's how I'm trying to do it at the studio with the prototyping. But there is that one lack of feedback loop. The early adopters are lacking. People really want to come to your system once it's talk of the town, instead of saying, let me try it, right? So those are the challenges. But going back to your question again, the biggest advantage is that we are the first movers. Nothing is happening yet, or at least little is happening. So once we penetrate that risk, that challenge, I think the risk, the potential is just unimaginable.
Thank you, Solomon. Dominique, you mentioned a while ago that a great advantage of the Ukrainian mindset is resiliency, and also that there's great talent there. So other than that, are there other like great advantages, and how do you and other ecosystem developers or even the public sector can leverage on that to make sure that Ukraine grows to its full potential as an ecosystem?
Well, I mean, the first thing actually is something we didn't talk about Ukraine is actually our governance, and I think of course we know that there is in Ukraine an issue around corruption, and this is something that is well known, that needs to be fought. However, for the first time, we have in Ukraine a government that is super young and completely in favor of digital transformation. Actually, the deputy prime minister, the number 2 in the government after the prime minister, is the minister of digital transformation, and he's only 28. And he's changing the country. Nobody knows, but Ukraine is going to be the first country in the world, actually next month, to launch the first fully digital passport. All the process between the government and people in Ukraine is going to be 100% digitalized within the next 3 years. And so we have a government that is massively involved in digitalizing the country. And actually, one of the things we discover is the more you digitalize, the less corruption you have. Because those tickets you have on the street because of a speeding ticket, well, guess what? Now you have it on your phone. There's no money exchange, and there's no way to change this. And so all that middle layer of corruption disappears all of a sudden because you digitalize everything and you include transparency in every processes. And actually, I think to me that's extremely interesting, the way we're dealing with it. Ukraine launched a year ago, the Ukraine Startup Fund. They decided to give grants to more than 120 startups in a year. It has a huge impact, and this is how you ignite change. This is how you change you move change. The last thing that is to me very important is when a country is relatively new, when legislation is relatively new, you can invent things. You can't in many places. It can be good, it can be bad, but at least you can try. And that the beauty of it is like we can try many things right now in Ukraine that we probably cannot try in other countries, which is great when you are innovative. Of course, you need to set limits. Of course, but we invent them as we speak, and that's with the technology of today. So I think, I think, well, I don't want to invite all my friends around the table, but I think we should visit each other, and I think we should try to work with each other, because there's not only Silicon Valley in the world, or Israel, or Berlin, but there's also all those amazing countries that we are discovering now, who are trying to also have an impact and not only change the world, but also change our own communities. And I think that's what I see in Ukraine, and I see big time.
Okay, thank you, Dominique. So we're about to close the panel, but can we ask just a last remark from Isabela on the advantages of having a small ecosystem such as Cali?
Sure. Dominique, I think, touched upon quite a few things. However, I would just say that going from 0 to 1 is easier than, keep building from 1 and up, as Peter Thiel said. So the main advantage is, creating from scratch. You'll be like, it might be harder in a sense, because there's chaos and nothing is built there for you to, build on. However, there's a whole opportunity to start from scratch. So that's one of the things that has happened. And I actually just wanted to touch upon one thing, or one recommendation maybe for ecosystem developers. And I agree with Dominique, we should definitely, touch base. And, through the internal chat, I was just inviting the three of them to connect with us through the Capital Summit, which is our, large capital finance investment event. And, it's gotten quite a few, like a big boom, and it's virtual. So that's like a great way to connect not only you guys as ecosystem developers, but also your startups, so that, they can pitch here and we can see what's happening there in Ethiopia, Cape Verde, in Ukraine and stuff. So that would be quite interesting. But before I leave and touching upon the base of like the advantage, I would just say that there's this, even though there's, brain drain. However, some of these regions, or at least in Cali, have mentors, right? So we have corporations, VPs, founders of like larger corporations, maybe not the innovative startups that we want, but there's tons of them here. So one of the things that we started building on very early on, 2014 back then, was building mentor networks. When there's an advantage there, that when there's nothing in the ecosystem, those corporates, those managers, those presidents actually yearn to leave a legacy. They yearn it. They already built a big company. They're older. They have more experience. They've gone through the ups and downs of running a business. And one of the things that they want definitely is to leave something for the ecosystem. So touching base with them is very easy, because they yearn to leave a legacy. So we started building our local mentor network back in 2014. Today we have over 250 mentors that have gone through all the different processes, and that makes it an easy step, because we invested very little money every year, about $10,000, to keep running the mentor network. Those $10,000 usually went to a person who would actually manage the platform, the mentor platform. And these guys would just donate their time. And having this big corporates donate their time in order for the future startups of the region, that just made it a pay it forward, environment and community building for everybody. So just their generosity would pay on. And now 6 years later, we have over 250 mentors. They've been trained by us. They keep doing it. Now there's new mentor networks starting around Cali. And that's the easiest way to get from 0 to 1. And the advantage and the easy part is that because there's nothing, they yearn to give something. So connecting with them makes it's very easy. And you can, and just to close up on that idea, we started with 30 mentors. Our first mentor network was a breakfast, 30 mentors, and those 30 mentors brought in 2 people each, and then those brought 2 people each, and now we have this huge mentor network. And also the interesting part is that once they start working with innovative startups, if they were still heads of their big corporations, they were inspired to change. So we started grabbing them so that they could join our innovation programming. And those big corporations are now changing, and now they're changing their mindset so that they're actually starting to, touch and through investments and stuff. So I will work a lot, and that's what every time somebody asks, I'm like, mentor network, get the big guys who actually yearn to leave a legacy, and that's like the easiest way to go. So now that's it, and you guys are all invited to our Capital Summit. It should happen sometime in August or September this year.
Thank you, Isabela. We'll sure to go if COVID permits or.
I don't know. When I say go, virtually. Come virtually. Join us virtually. We would love to host you here because Cali has, a whole sense of, hosting, salsa dancing, everything. So.
Okay, yes. So thank you, everyone. It was a great discussion on ecosystem development, and it was great to learn from everyone. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Nice to meet
everyone.
you. Have a
Thank
nice
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.